welcome. Episode number 3, Day Trippin'. I'm your host, Rudy Montijo. Again, we're here at the Merc Bar in Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you to Rick Phillips for letting us host here. Today we have a really special guest. His name is Tommy Cavanagh. Thank you for your service, first and foremost. Appreciate you coming down here.
Appreciate you having me. Thank you.
My pleasure. So Tommy is a veteran. He came in the Daytryp to tell you about his story, but want to really welcome you and just really get to know you a little bit more. I know we had lunch the other day with your sister for the first time. That was the first time we actually met. Yeah. Which is different because the other guests that I've had, I've known a little bit more. So this will be a pretty cool experience. This is being on Spotify. It's on YouTube. Okay. So why don't you tell the viewers a little bit more about yourself, just your background, where you came from.
Okay, yeah. So my name is Tommy Cavanagh. Obviously, I'm from New York originally, but grew up most of my life in Arizona.
Well, where in New York?
I'm from the Channel, like Broad Channel, like Rockaway, kind of like where the Ramones are from.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But most of my family still lives back east. My immediate family's out here now, but went to middle school and high school out here, and then joined the military pretty much right after high school. Did 1 semester in college, figured it wasn't for me at that time.
So 18, 19?
Yeah, I was 19 when I had officially joined. I was 18 when I signed up. I had like a delayed entry program because I had to like get a bunch of paperwork and everything done.
And what branch did you go into?
I was in the Army.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was in the infantry in the Army, so my focus was just mainly combat. Like that's all we were.
What year was this?
This was 2011 when I had joined.
Okay.
So I went February 2011 and then graduated basic training May 2011.
Okay.
And then was stationed up in Fort Lewis, Washington.
Okay.
For about 6 months, and then in November we ended up leaving to Afghanistan for a 12-month tour.
In September, that's an interesting timeline because in September, 9/11 happens.
Yeah.
So what was it like being in the military? Already enlisted, already trained up after that scenario in Washington and New York with the Twin Towers.
Yeah, so it was crazy for me because like I said, I'm originally from New York, so being like, you know what I mean, being in the military 10 years later after that, it was such a big impact for me overall.
Was the city part of your everyday life growing up and you saw these icons of America?
Yeah, I mean, they were always there. My sister actually used to work in the Twin Towers when we originally lived in New York.
Okay.
So she used to work in those exact buildings that had fallen. So it was just like this kind of weird scenario where it was all kind of connected, that my sister had worked there, that whole thing, and then that was a big aspect of me joining the military too.
So very personal to you.
Yeah, it was very personal, and like it was still so new, like being only 10 years, like, you know what I mean, they just had hit that 1 decade mark of that whole scenario happening, and it was still a full-fledged like war at that point when I had went in. So when in 2011 when we had left, we were attached to 3rd Group Special Forces. They had split all the infantry units up, which is abnormal for them, and so there was 2 squads of infantry guys attached to a 3rd. There was 16 normal infantry guys, and then there was about 16 to 20 SF and a couple support guys, and we all lived together in a mud building, like pretty much in the village in eastern Afghanistan.
In Afghanistan?
Yeah.
What's typical to all stay together, all 16 of you?
Yeah, so we all stayed together because they broke it up by squads, but our area was designated one of the worst. Us and another valley over from us, they were the 2 hottest areas in the whole valley out of the whole thing. So they tasked it up with a little more guys.
Okay, and before we get further into that, what were you like before the Army as a person? What was your affect like? Your temperament? Were you funny? Like, what were you like before the Army?
Yeah, I mean, I've always grown up and like have always liked to be like the funny kid. I've always like tried to make a situation funny and everything like that. I grew up kind of a smaller kid. When I joined the military, I was only 133 pounds. Like I barely made the weight limit. So like,
what's the weight limit?
I think it's like 130 or something like that. Like very small. Like I was like, the doctors were like, I don't know if you're gonna make it. Like I was very like skinny.
What do they say if you're too small? Like you gotta
gain some weight. There's some guys that had got sent back to gain some weight for it. But yeah, I mean, I was always like a funnier guy. I always like making everybody laugh and having a good time. Like I grew up, like I said, kind of a smaller kid, so I was always not short-tempered, but always like I'll always stand my ground against everybody type thing. But I wasn't like an angry kid.
Not really Napoleon complex, but just you weren't going to be a pushover either.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. And then after the Army, or in the Army, you served. You were in combat.
Yeah.
So bombs going off, bullets. describe some of those situations
Yeah, so
for us.
before we had left, I actually got certified as a squad designated marksman. So each squad, or our 2 squads, I carried they call it like a ERB M14. So it's
ERB,
like,
what's ERB stand for?
like enhanced battle rifle. So
Okay.
the M14 is what they used to use in like Vietnam. That was like their main battle rifle, and then they had recustomized it to like be like a hollow stock. It's more like a long distance gun at that point. So that's
Okay.
that was my job in the infantry squad. I was like the squad designated marksman on deployment. So I was trained for that, and then we had left for deployment, like I said, November, and then wasn't too hot when we had gotten there. When we first got our first brief in country, they actually told us we're going to the hottest area in the whole valley. They have no intel on any of the enemies for us, and they had lost 4 SF dudes prior to us arriving.
What's going through your head? I'm trying to, for myself, but also for the listeners and the viewers, really understand. Like, unless you're a veteran, you can't relate to this. Unless you've done certain things, there's no way. So as best you can, try and paint the picture or articulate what's going on through your head, both mentally, the physical strain, and emotionally. What's it like to be in this situation? The fear.
Yeah, so like I said, we had gotten that brief we had gotten country probably about like 2-3 days, and then we got tasked with everything. So I mean, at that point, both of my squad leaders have had 50 plus months in Iraq and Afghanistan combined, so they were all experienced. The rest of the whole 14 of us had no combat experience, including our team leaders. They had 2 Iraq deployments, but with no combat. But yeah, I mean, it was like a fear and almost like an excitement, because when you join the infantry, you join it as a combat role, and that's really when you get to test your job out. Is like you really only get to test it out in combat type thing. Like you could do all the training scenarios, but it's really, so there's like a fear and an excitement that's kind of like pushing that like fear down a little bit. Like, okay, like maybe I'm this well trained and I get to go and test my skills out now.
When you say that, there's a story that I've heard about, like, fear or anxiety and excitement actually have the same physiological responses in the body.
Yeah.
Your heart rate elevates, your palms get sweaty. And so there's an old story about, I forget who it was, but there's 2 performers. I think Bruce Springsteen's one of them and somebody else. And as one person goes on stage and they freeze,
Yeah.
that's the anxiety taking over. The next person goes on stage, they have the same thing, but they're not scared. They're excited, so their heart rate's up, their palms are sweaty, but they see this as an opportunity to go out and perform. So after all of your training, all that training pushes down your fears. Now you're excited to go actually and use all these tools and skills that you've been training for months and months.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what it is. And then having those 2 squad leaders there that were these super high experienced dudes that were like, yo, this is exactly what we sign up for. Like, they had never done that style of deployment, being attached. They've just done normal infantry deployments where they're with a whole company, which is like a couple hundred people, and they're doing normal big missions with like platoon size elements of 40 people and stuff.
Is there any type of, whether it's a fellow veteran or colleague, what do you call your teammates?
Just like battle buddies.
Your battle buddies?
Yeah.
That kind of helps prepare you from a mental health standpoint, or does the Army do that at all, or is that just kind of...
Yeah, I think it's just like really having, for us, I think it was our squad leaders that were our biggest thing. Like, I had a really great squad leader who I'm in contact with today. His name's Mike Abram, but he was outstanding on deployment, and he kind of like, he was a father of 5 when we left for that deployment. Actually had father of 4, had his 5th kid while we were on deployment.
Okay.
And so he kind of like was a father figure to us, like on deployment, and kind of like took us under his wing more than like a soldier and a squad leader would have a normal bond, because we didn't have a semi-normal deployment. Like, we grew beards and wore shorts and Nike running shoes, and it was very odd from a normal deployment.
Now you're in combat. What's that like?
So we had gotten there November, December, nothing really too much. We had taken like a couple pop shots, which is just like a person just shooting like around at us as we drive by and stuff like that. So nothing too hot. And then around April timeframe is when it really started to kick off, because like I said, we were in the east, so we got a lot of snow, but it started to melt in April. So I mean, I remember our first firefight, we were at our VSP, which is where we call our base, like our mud building.
What's VSP?
They call it like, it's a village stability platform.
Okay.
So that was like the overall mission was called like a VSP.
Okay.
So we were at the VSP, and we started taking shots, and I mean, it was just like clockwork. Like, you didn't even think about it. Like, threw on the gear, got on the wall, got to the next tower, everything like that. Like it was, when I was done with it, it was like, oh man, it was just like the training and repetitions had just taken over type deal.
The muscle memory.
Yeah, like it wasn't. I didn't think like during it. Like I was like, oh wow, this is what we signed up for, and then I was like, heard a couple more rounds, and then like back into it type thing.
Were you ever exposed to like very close gunfire or an IED explosion?
Yeah, so I mean, we've all been almost shot multiple times. I was actually almost shot in the head like on my birthday by a sniper that got probably from me to you and hit the wall right behind me. And then I've been blown up once in a LMTV, which is like an armored vehicle, but it's like only a 2-door vehicle. So I've been blown up by like they estimated to be like an 80-pounder IED. So it like ripped the wheels off, ripped the engine off, everything like that.
That is insane. What does this do to somebody's mental capacity and their fight or flight, their nervous response system, to be in this type of environment and exposed and literally immersed? You're there. Yeah. It's happening all the time on a daily basis. This is not just a traumatic event. This is a traumatic lifestyle.
Yeah. I think it plays like there were some dudes who on our deployment just weren't about like the firefight life and everything like that. And then there was like some of us, like me and then a few other of my really close buddies, were like fighting at the bit to be like the first guy to get to the tower so you can use the heavy gun, like first guy to. It almost just becomes like your daily activity. Like you'd be eating dinner and it'd be like, all right, like shots are popping off, like are they close enough to like get up to go return fire, or is it like not even worth it and you just kind of keep eating? It's almost like a weird psychological click where you just don't care at some points.
So the response is built in. The subconscious is now programmed to fight.
Yeah.
And to analyze the situation and determine, all right, do I go out here now or is this not a threat?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You're constantly in vigilance and constantly searching for threats and how to respond to that.
Yeah, so I mean, you're just always like, especially when we were in our VSP, I wouldn't say we were more lax. It was just like more like, hey, we're a little bit safer. You still have that fight aspect. Because like I said, a lot of the guys weren't like flight at all. A lot of them were like, yo, we're bringing the fight. Like, let's go out and get them. Like, and we were attached to, like I said, a 3rd Group Special Forces team. So a lot of those dudes are top tier, like operators in the world that are now next side by side with us, treating us like one of them. So they were like almost pushing us just by them being there.
Wow. Okay, so you're the Special Forces. You guys are working in unity with them, and they're have different kind of training, and you guys are helping one another, supporting one another.
Yeah.
What's that like?
I mean, it was great because, like I said, I was just I was an infantry guy. I know, like, it's to like the normal person, like, well, that's a lot. But then you have these top tier guys who were some of the best operators in the world, and they would treat us like we were one of them. Like everybody was on a first name basis, and they taught us immense training and explosives and door breaches and how to clear rooms and just aspects that we never got to see in the normal Army world.
So just mutual respect and support.
Yeah, and at first we had a little bit of nervousness because there were some teams that were not treating their like infantry attachments as well. Like they wouldn't let them eat at the same time or be in the same room as them at the same time. It just like an aspect of like they thought they were better. But we had 3 teams throughout our deployment because they do 9-month rotations. We did a 12-month, but every team that we had was outstanding, like treated us so great and taught us a crazy amount of knowledge.
You're married?
Yes.
You have kids? When do you leave Afghanistan? When do you come back? When does that part of your life start?
So I actually got married 1 month before I even left to basic training. So I met my wife when I was in high school. I was actually a junior. We had dated for a while, and then I told her like, hey, I'm thinking about joining the military. Like I would join in the Army. I would love for you to come with me. Like the only way for you to come with me is like for us to get married. Like I think it'd be a great idea. I asked her dad, went about it completely respectfully. Her parents were 100% with it. So we got married 1 month before I left the basic training, and then so she moved up to Washington with me for about 4 months, and then left. So I was married the whole time while I was on deployment. So she was there. I mean, when I had gotten blown up, I had actually called her from one of the Afghan Special Forces guys' phones to let her know, like, hey, that I was involved in an IED. Like, the Army's probably going to call you and let you know, but I just want you to know that I'm fine. Like, I got to go get checked out for TBI, everything like that.
What's TBI?
Traumatic brain injury. So they send you to a clinic and they do like a concussion test on you, and you're supposed to stay there for a couple days and get it all done.
When do you come back home?
So I come back home November of 2012 is when I got back and then went back to Washington.
Are you still in the military?
No, I actually had gotten out in September of 2019 is when I retired.
So you served 8 years?
Yeah, just over 8 years.
That's a lot. That's a lot for, I think, anybody that's gone through a traumatic experience. Just magnify that times 1,000 and then do it every single day.
Yeah.
What were you like after that?
I think, I mean, I was like I think coming back and going in, I was like this perfect thing of what the Army wanted, because like I was this thing that was like, I want to go to combat, I want to do this, I want to fight, like I don't want to do this, I want to be molded into like this thing that could just like the Army could be like, yo, let's go to combat, and I'll be like, all right, let's go. Like,
you're a soldier.
Yeah, like that's, and then when I went in, I was planning on doing 20 years. Like I had told my wife from the beginning, like, hey, you're going in, like just be prepared for 20, and I'm going to be great with that. So when I came back from deployment, like I had all this outstanding, immense amount of like knowledge and combat experience that 99% of the Army, even a lot of the infantry guys that were on our deployment, just separate teams, didn't have. Like we were just so far immense from them that we were just like leaps and bounds ahead of them. So I had gained rank very fast. I was great at what I did. Became an E5 like right as I could. I became an E6 right as I could. Like every unit that I had went to, I had top like NCOERs, which is like a report that you get. Like every NCO, like non-commissioned officer, gets one. I was top on all of them all the time. So I was the perfect criteria for what the Army wanted.
And then now you've done all this training, you've excelled. Now you're out of the military. It's 2019. What was it like coming back in the civilian sector as far as turning off that fight response system?
I mean, I still think to this day it's still, I mean, I still have that fight, because for me it's never been flight. Like I still have it. Like there's still times where just being so immersed in that combat and wild experience for so long that it's just something that I don't think a lot of guys ever lose. Like I know a lot of my guys from deployment are still that same way. They have that like fight, like don't always bring the fight to the person who wants it type mentality.
So let me try and explain this to everybody that's watching or listening. Is I've seen this commonly in my practice, but if you're a veteran and you've seen combat, I have some ex-NFL players or inmates, people who are in the prison system. Yeah. You're in this position, and if you play, if you're in the Army, you're in it. If you play in the NFL, that's your entire life. Obviously, if you're in prison, that's what it is. But you're in a situation where you're forced to survive.
Yeah.
And so all the skills that you're being taught, or all the skills that you just acquire by your environment and absorbing those, are all designed to keep you alive.
Yeah, exactly.
So now we're in a setting where there isn't threats. There's not gunfire. There's not a threat of an IED or enemies, lurking. How do you turn that off? And most people, they can't, because that's ingrained into your subconscious.
Yeah.
About 85% of our natural reactions come from our subconscious. And so how do we rewire that? If we can't do it, like how did it change your temperament? Were you more irritable? Were you angry?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think I was definitely more irritable, and then more just very fast to like react to stuff and just snap off. Like if someone were to cut us off, because like in country, we would run the road. Like nobody was coming in and out of our convoys. Like we wanted someone to back off. Like they would know to back off, like type deal. So like now it was just like very just angry, short-tempered, just like me against the world almost mentality. Because like, well, especially being out now, like I don't have that camaraderie that I had when I was in. Like being in, yeah, I wasn't on deployment with a lot of the guys that I was, any of the guys that I was in my last few years, but I'm still so ingrained in the military. Like I lived on base, I was always around, like there was always training going on. So it was just such a natural environment for me to be around that. And then being out was just like a complete 180.
So now you're out, you're with your family. Do you have kids at this point?
Yeah, so I had my son in 2017. So he's 2? Yeah, so he turned 2 right when we had moved back to Arizona. And then I had my daughter, she turned 3 just last month, actually.
I think, how old is your son now?
He's 6.
Okay, yeah, I think our kids are similar in ages. So I have kids, and I guess, just how did it affect your family? It couldn't have been positive.
No, I mean, I think it was great that I didn't have kids when I came back, because I was just like this, just like not angry person, but I was just like, I want to just do what I was trained to do type mentality. So I think it was outstanding that I didn't have kids when I had moved back, because I just wasn't not a great person. I was just still so ingrained in combat. So now being out and having kids, it's definitely helped me see like, oh, I need to. That's why I ended up actually going to Daytryp, was a big factor of me being like, I want to try to be a better parent and a better father to those kids overall.
So you come to Daytryp. I think our chief legal counsel and your sister are friends, and we got in contact, and I think she got you some package. And you came in the Daytryp. You did 3 sessions?
Yeah, I did 3 sessions.
You did 3 sessions. We're going to do a 4th after this.
Yeah.
How did ketamine treatment, first of all, describe your experience coming in the Daytryp.
Yeah, so I came in, I did the initial counseling and everything like that, which was outstanding. I didn't know, I have a friend who is a really close friend of me who has done some like ketamine type stuff in California before, and he was like, I had great results from it, you should try it out. I just haven't found a place before Daytryp that I was like, oh, this is a great fit type thing for me.
What about Daytryp from the intake process and from the building and the context, the situation, or not situation, but the rooms and the treatment rooms? What about that made you feel more comfortable to actually come to Daytryp?
I mean, the building itself, like just coming in, like just felt like it was like just like a stress-free zone. Like when my wife had taken me there to the thing, she had waited in the waiting room, and she was like, I love this place. Like, I need to remodel our house like this. So I appreciate that on you guys' part. But yeah, I mean, and then during the intake, I also didn't feel like they were trying to just find me a reason to have an appointment. I feel like they were almost like trying to qualify to see if I was even a good candidate for Daytryp. I didn't feel like I was being forced into it. I felt like they were almost like, why should we do this? Like, why should you come in? Like, why do you think it's going to help you? I almost felt like it was more like a welcoming experience than just trying to get a paying client type thing.
Thank you. You go through the treatments. Do you remember who your trip guide was?
Lauren.
Lauren?
Yeah.
Lauren's great. Just tell us about your experience going in.
My first treatment, obviously, we started with like a lower dose to help it and everything. But I mean, Lauren was outstanding. Like, she'd walked me through the whole process prior. The whole like ceremony leading up to the ketamine treatment is awesome. Like, it just makes you like relax. Like, the room that I was in was like just nice. The bed was outstanding. Like it was like dark, but it was like a perfect amount of light at the same time. But yeah, I mean, she made me feel like during the whole thing, like, hey, I'm right here. I will never like bother you during your treatment. I want you to have a great journey. But if you ever need me, like, I'm here with a hand. Like, whatever you need, I'm here. She was like very welcoming in the whole experience.
Did you disassociate at all? Like out of body experience?
Yeah. So I definitely had an out of body experience on all 3 of the times that I had went and everything, and it was different scenarios each time. I was expecting to go to some different places or more like combat focused, like just to maybe some of my like healing that needed to be done, but I didn't do any of that. It was more like future, like seeing my kids, which I think was a better journey than what it was. It was almost like I was above them, seeing them like evolve into like adults and everything like that, which I think was way cooler than what I was expecting to happen.
I just got chills. Yeah. I know what you're talking about. And if nobody has ever done ketamine therapy, it's different than any other psychedelic, but it is an amazing experience that's really hard to articulate. Yeah. You did a great job in painting that picture for everybody. So you go through it. You are seeing your kids. A lot of people think that this is the biggest fear sometimes, is that they don't want to go back to this dark place where something happened to them that wasn't good and wasn't nice. And sometimes it's when we were children, sometimes it's when we're an adult, but they don't want to relive that. Yeah. And I'll describe how I talk to people about it, and then you can see if this makes sense to you. But from my experience, it has a way of reshaping and reframing events with more love and compassion and acceptance, not necessarily in a dark way. And so it only, if anything, it opens the heart to saying this was a learning experience. I don't have to hold on to this anymore. Let me heal and move forward.
Yeah, I think that was exactly, like I said, I was expecting to go towards like some combat trauma that I've had, or just some of that, or some childhood trauma that I've had, but it was more, like I said, seen the future with my kids, and it was almost like I had taken that trauma and just like not suppressed it, but it was just like, hey, you can release this. Like there's no need to hold on to this or that. Like it's over. You've processed it, and now like look at what this future is holding for you. And like I said, I was like a very out of body experience. Like I'd seen my son giving a speech to a giant auditorium, which was very polar opposite of what he is he's a very like more reserved kid. So it was very, very wild to see like, hey, this is where my mind is taking me. And I was and Lauren was like, if you're ever going into a dark place or nervous, like put your hand out. Like, because I think a lot of people have this thing with ketamine is they're scared that they're not going to be able to control anything in their body, but you still are there, like, and you still have like an aspect of it, like, so.
Was it gentle?
Yeah, it was gentle. It was very, and it wasn't, I was more scared that it was going to be like hit a wall and then all of a sudden I'm in this like trip that I can't get out of, but it was very like, very subtle. Like even when they came in and gave me each shot, they did it in half doses, so a shot in each arm, and it was very gentle. Like they came up, touched my shoulder, like let me know I was there, because I had the headphones on with the music playing and then the eye covers. Like, so it was very like it never startled me, which is very surprising, because like I said, I'm very like fight type person. Like, so for me to be touched with no sensory going on, like I didn't startle at all, which was very surprising.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's a ton of people come in and that's one of the biggest fears. Like they don't like being touched. Yeah. And so to be in an environment where you don't really know Lauren, but you're made to feel welcome by her of course, and by the entire setting. It's very holistic, very serene, very conducive for healing. It puts you in a place where you can now receive help and receive healing. Yeah, and I think that's why my second and third session were like even more like just more in depth and everything like that than my first session, because I kind of didn't go in with hesitation, but I was like, what's gonna happen? I don't know what's happening with it. So I think the second and third session, like if I ever recommend it to people, I always say do at least 3, and that way you can really experience it, because your first one is very, you kind of finding your way through it, and then the second and third are way better. The first one is very mild. We follow a standard protocol of around 0.5 milligrams per kilo, and so you go up from there. So we don't want to give anybody increased anxiety or kind of scare them away, and so that's really to warm you up for what's to come, and then you feel more comfortable about going deeper into the journey. And you know, the larger dose, it has an effect of what's called durable and accumulative, meaning it builds on one another. And then it's durable in the sense that it lasts longer. So it can last up, when I say last, I mean the mitigating symptoms of anxiety and depression for months up to even a year sometimes. Yeah. When I had left the first session, I got done with my journey, took my headphones off. Lauren had asked if I was good, if I needed anything. And when I woke up, I had, you know, like a little bowl of mixed nuts, like the tea, like everything was already there. It was like she was watching me so closely, because I'll have the monitor on my finger. Like there's so much, she's not doing anything else. Like I never saw her phone once during the journey. Like I never felt like she was like leaving the room or anything. Like I felt like she was just there the whole time with me. So I didn't feel like I woke up and it was already the stuff there and everything was cold. So it's not like she brought it in right away. Like she was there, she was holding space. Yeah. I'll make sure to give Lauren some kudos. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that. I really appreciate, you know, your story and being so open and vulnerable with all of this. We have a lot of, you know, veterans and people that ask questions. Just for a minute before we close up, I'd like you just to speak to veterans who are looking for help. And the VA system, we really want to get in contact with the VA to get them to reimburse some of this. I know it's a cash pay industry, but if anybody out there listens to this, I'd love to get in contact with them so we could help more veterans. We already offer a 20% discount as part of our heroes, but we want to help more people. So, you know, talk to the veterans if they're thinking about doing some of this, if they're having these struggles. What would you suggest to them? Yeah, I mean, I would suggest like definitely reaching out to you guys, or like if they're in a different state, finding a ketamine treatment that is like a good like recommendation one, or like credible one that they can do it. Because like I said, I went in and I was just like, I wasn't mad at anything. I was just mad at everything at the same time. Like I held on to this anger and when I left, like a car had cut me off and my wife was driving, and I wasn't even fazed. And my wife, who I've been married to since 2011, was like, what was that? Like so I think it's just like, and when veterans leave the service, I don't think it's the mental health that hurts them. I think it's the sense of purpose that they don't have anymore, like when they leave. So I think like
they're like trying to find their purpose and everything like that. So I think being able to go into a ketamine session and being able to like get rid of some of that stress and anxiety that they've had built up from the Army, I think would like help them be able to go out into other situations and adapt more into the civilian world overall.
I like when you say that, because I can only speak from a male's perspective, and we both have children, and most people will say, well, you have kids and a family, that's your purpose. There's more to life than that, as far as having a purpose. Like, what's my purpose in this world? It was to serve and fight for the country.
Yeah.
That's no longer there. What else can you do? So how did it help you as far as from a purposeful standpoint?
Yeah, like I said, I was in real estate prior, doing a little stuff here and there, but after leaving the treatments, like it just made me focus on like, what do I want for the future, and like really buckle down on it. Like, hey, I'm gonna start doing this and that. Like, I actually just bought my first rental property in Ohio. It closed today. So like before, I was just like kind of just like stepping back, like kind of looking, but like after doing the ketamine treatments, it like just made me more like clear-minded. I felt like I was in a fog prior, so it opened up and made it be like, this is what you should do, and if it's not what you should do, find something else that you should do.
So it unlocked some of your potential.
Yeah.
How has your family been? Like, what do they say after your treatments now? How has that positively affected their quality of life, your quality of life?
Yeah, like I said, my wife was like, when I told you the story with getting cut off, she was like, whoa, like very surprised, and she's like, oh, maybe you're just coming down from the ketamine stuff. And then like I chilled out that day, like they said, you know what I mean, just hung out, relaxed, didn't do any big decisions or anything like that. But she's like, you're just so different, like just mindset wise. Like little things wouldn't set me off, like my kids like not listening to like me or my wife as much. I wouldn't be like, what are you guys doing? Like I'd be like, hey, what, like let's talk it out. Why are you guys upset? Like I was very more like, I felt like I was just a better father in general, because I can like relate to them. I was be like, why? Oh, I see that you're mad now. Like before it'd be like they're mad, then it gets me mad.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's like, it's almost more like a calming effect for my whole family.
So this is how ketamine essentially works, is the attachment that, and I've talked about it before, but the attachment between the inside of you and the external, you know, you get triggered.
Yeah.
And so it allows you to dissolve that attachment. It's very good with attachments in general, but it allows that barrier. So in this case, the barrier is your reaction, your response.
Yeah.
It lowers that wall, gives you time to respond differently. So now you're actually looking at your kids when they're upset, trying to figure out and talk to them about why they're mad, and understand why they're experiencing what they're experiencing, and be more present with them.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, then my wife said the same thing. And I mean, I didn't even ask her like, hey, how did, like, it's probably like a week after like my first one, and she was like, she's like, I wish you could do this like weekly. Like this is like the best thing I've ever, because I've gone to, since being out, even when I was in, I went through the therapist and all that stuff, and I've been on all types of meds that they could give me, sleep meds, PTSD meds, anxiety meds, depression, everything like that. But it would either make me a full-blown zombie or anything like that. And she was like, this is the wildest thing I've ever like experienced with you. And she's known me since I was 19 years old. So
that's incredible. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I think people are going to get a lot out of this interview. Our slogan at Daytryp is change your mind.
Yeah.
And so our goal is to educate and help change people's mind on their belief system to not only what they're capable of, but around psychedelics, you know, with the intentional use for mental health as well. So I think we did that in this one. So thank you very much. Yeah. Again, we appreciate everybody. Please subscribe if you're not already. And thanks again to Rick Phillips and the Merc Bar. We'll see you next time. Thank you.